anyway, I was on OT5, operating Thetan 5, and the highest level you could get to at that time was OT7. And now you can get to OT8, and soon you'll be able to get to OT9, I guess. I don't know.
Inevitably, I suppose.
Yeah.
Are there also, there seem to be, I understand there's space visitors involved in all this.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere.
Oh, yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole, the world, planet Earth is only one little mud ball, as they call it. And really the people who are on planet Earth were all sort of rejects from the Galactic Confederacy, and we all just sort of got dumped here in a very long story, which if I talk to you about it on camera, you would have to cut it out because it's very confidential. So I won't do that.
Confidential in what way? You mean you're not allowed to, no one's allowed to speak about it?
Nobody can talk about it at all. And people, that's the thing that Scientology sues people for more than anything. They're really trying to keep these upper levels confidential.
Why is that? Just because they're so absurd? Or?
They say that it's very important to keep these levels confidential because if people are given access to this information before they have gone through the lower levels of auditing and therefore sort of gotten themselves in good enough shape to hear it, they'll get pneumonia and they'll die. And it's very, very dangerous for people to hear this information. The only thing about that is that it's been published in a lot of newspaper articles, a lot of books. A lot of people on the internet have seen this information, and I haven't heard of one person getting sick over it, but I have heard of several people getting sued over it. My personal feeling about it is I think it's much more a marketing problem. They actually did sue at one point, and their defense, their argument was that these were trade secrets. The judge thought that there was some conflict between they're calling these things trade secrets and they're calling themselves a religion. And she said, you can't do both. You got to do one or the other. You want to be a business with trade secrets or you want to be a religion, and they kind of backed off from the issue legally at that point. But the way they're dealing with it now is just a copyright infringement situation. A couple of people who posted some of those materials on the internet got raided.
Wow.
One guy named Dennis Ehrlich, who's down in Southern California, posted some of this material. He's a former Scientologist. And one morning, some very high-level Scientologists and their attorney arrived at his house with some policemen.
Wow.
And they had gotten a search warrant, or whatever you call an approval from a judge for a raid. And they went through and they took all of his materials. They took stuff off of his computer. I think they took his hard drive. I don't know what they took, but they're pretty serious about this. And they're suing him, and they're suing you know how on the internet there's like local servers that allow you into it and stuff. They're suing the local server who let him on, and they're really trying to.
Just because he was telling their little story and.
Well, they say that it's because he was posting copyrighted materials on the internet. The judge refused to give him a temporary restraining order, and said that I'm not really sure about the legal, but there's a thing called fair use, which allows people to post, certain amounts of copyrighted materials or whatever. So, now it's going to get into a whole legal thing about that. But the bottom line on it is that they stand to lose an enormous amount of money if these materials are released for the broad public. Then why does anybody have to pay anything to see them?
True.
So.
Had you met your husband in Scientology, or so you're both there? Did you both come to? How did you come to the decision to leave?
Well, I started to become very disillusioned probably 8 or 9 years before we actually left. And he began to get disillusioned too. But there were a couple of factors involved in it. Number one, we couldn't talk to each other about it because you aren't allowed to talk about any critical feelings that you're having. If you talk about the possibility of leaving with anybody other than the authorized person in the organization, like you can't talk about things like that with your husband or whatever. Now, you can say, well, yes, you can. Just go out to the park where nobody's listening to you and talk, you know. I know. I realize that now. But at the time, my state of mind was such that I was really locked into their whole way of thinking. I really was doing the self-policing that they want people to do. So was my husband. So there was that aspect of it, but it was also, you know, as I said earlier, I kept thinking that it could get better, that I could change it, that these things that were wrong were not the way it was supposed to be, that if it could only be the way it was really supposed to be, everything would be great. What finally happened was my husband was beaten up by one of the senior executives for refusing to do something that he wanted him to do. And that was kind of the last straw for him. He kind of finally realized there's no way that, I mean, I have to get out of here. You know. And by that point, I had sort of been waiting for him to make a decision because I didn't want to leave without him. I was afraid I would never see him again. And I don't know even now if that would have been true or not, you know. But we did. We left together in 1989. We didn't even talk about it with each other for almost 2 years. We were so scared. We were so afraid of what was going to happen to us.
Why were you scared?
Because you... it's kind of like if somebody leaves the Mormons or leaves some other group and you've been told these horrible things will happen to you, you know. And not only that, but we had both been in the part of Scientology that harassed critics, you know, that intimidated people, and we knew that because of what both of us knew about the organization, we felt we were in danger.
What is that part of Scientology? Does it have a name?
It used to be called the Guardian's Office, and now it's called the Office of Special Affairs.
What do they do to their critics, essentially?
Well, I can tell you some of the things that they've done to us.
What have they done to you?
They have a private investigator who has done things to us, which I know he's done to a number of other people. He came up here to Seattle, and he started knocking on the doors of our neighbors and our friends, and spreading a lot of slander about particularly me and also Vaughn. And called my parents, called my sister, contacted various people in other parts of the country, and doing what they call a noisy investigation. It's all according to Hubbard's directives about what you do with people who are causing trouble for Scientology. You want to scare them into shutting up, basically. They're trying to silence you by intimidation, of course. But that didn't work, so he started coming around and trying to convince people that Vaughn was a neo-Nazi. The neo-Nazi aspect of it was because Vaughn was testifying in Germany. And being a neo-Nazi in Germany is illegal. So they were trying to get the German government to refuse to deal with him.